So the United States is ramping up combat operations in Iran, but things might look a little different this time. A U.S. official just stated, quote, "We don't have enough air defense and long-range munitions to safely sustain operations." Additionally, the Yemen-based Houthis have now joined the conflict, earlier today announcing a blockade of Saudi Arabia effective immediately. And last night, the Iranian-backed Shiite militias across Iraq and Syria warned that they too will begin targeting U.S. bases if American strikes in Iran continue. And by all accounts, those strikes are not only set to continue, but to escalate here in coming days. In fact, President Trump a few moments ago issued a statement saying, quote, "Every time Iran kills an American soldier, they will pay for that killing many times over." This directive has been passed on to Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Daniel Kaine, and every leader in the military. So a quick note on U.S. casualties. We have an update as the Pentagon has released the name and pictures of two of the fallen over the last couple days. On the screen here is First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, 25 years old, of Hawaii. Lieutenant Feehan was killed in an Iranian missile strike on the U.S. Air Base in Jordan. He was assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 55th Air Defense Artillery Regiment, 32nd Army Air Missile Defense Command out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Also killed in that strike was Private Isabella Gonzalez, 19 years old, of Carrollton, Texas. Private Gonzalez was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 57th Air Defense Artillery Regiment, 57th Air Defense Artillery Regiment of the 52nd Air Defense Artillery Brigade, 10th Army Air Missile Defense Command, based out of Ansbach, Germany. Additionally, when the casualties from that strike were announced, we heard 2 killed in action and 1 missing. The Pentagon updated yesterday that they have found unidentified remains at the strike location, and an examination process is ongoing to verify those remains. The Pentagon yesterday also announced that another U.S. service member was killed in northern Iraq on July 18th during a controlled detonation of unexploded ordnance from a downed Iranian one-way attack drone. That brings the count from the most recent Iranian strikes to 3 Americans killed in action, 1 missing, pending the verification of their remains. And the numbers of wounded have varied quite a bit. The most reliable that I've seen has been likely a couple dozen. Now, turning to the Washington Post article discussing the likely escalation here in the coming days, they quoted a senior U.S. official familiar with internal discussions saying, quote, "The U.S. is planning for a wider war." He added that the Pentagon was increasing the number of military aircraft in the region, but the official, speaking on the condition of anonymity, cautioned that the expansion of U.S. operations will be limited by dwindling stockpiles of air defense and long-range munitions and constraints on the ability to surge more troops and aircraft into the area because of battle damage. And we'll show some of that battle damage here in a moment. Quite a bit of satellite imagery coming out from Iran showing what appears to be significant damage at, in this case, the U.S. Air Base in Jordan. The official said, quote, "We do not have enough to safely sustain operations, and I don't think the White House is aware of that," end quote. Now, the munition shortage conversation is difficult because you're working with a lot of sets of data that is not publicly available. So we don't know how many munitions we've utilized. Let's stick with interceptors for a second, air defense interceptors. We don't know how many we had on hand. We don't know how many we have utilized. We don't know how many we need for the future of the Iran operation. And we don't know how many we need for contingency operations. Like, do we have enough to not just fight Iran right now, but be able to fight China over Taiwan if that kicked off next week? Would we be able to do that and deter Russian aggression into, say, a NATO member state next month? So these are the conversations that the military planners are having. When we say we have a shortage of munitions, I would not read into that we don't have enough air defense interceptors to protect our troops in the Middle East. My read on that is that it's probably we don't have the ideal amount to spread around the entire world. U.S. troops on a global basis at this point. That said, we have certainly chewed through a lot of long-range munitions and a lot of air defense interceptors, and there's a possibility that that shortage and maybe spreading those thinner than expected has led to some of these strikes, some of these Iranian missiles in recent days making it through U.S. airbase. I mean, we've got some imagery here that's coming out showing the effects of those strikes in Jordan, and it looks like one of these appears to be a containerized housing unit, kind of the barracks setup, if you will. With quite a few of those destroyed in this strike. There was another facility, a hangar, I believe, near an airfield that looks like it took a direct hit. And then a third that just came out a few moments ago showing what appears to be another aircraft hangar hit. Now, Iran is claiming that they hit like F-35s and F-16s inside of some of these buildings. I haven't seen any verification of that. But this last one here, it at least looks like a couple drones, likely MQ-9 Reapers sitting out on the tarmac, were damaged in this strike. So it's a bit concerning that Iranian missiles are getting through. And from what we can tell, I mean, that looks like they hit their target. All right, we don't know exactly what they were aiming at, but that is directly on top of some of these buildings on the airfield. Now, we are seeing a continuation of U.S. military assets flow back into the Middle East. So we do have substantial force presence there. But Iranian attacks throughout the region are continuing. Just in the last 24 to 48 hours, Kuwait announced that an electric plant was hit once again, as well as a desalination facility hit for the second day in a row. So those are the facilities that make the water drinkable for a large portion of folks in Kuwait and a number of different countries in the Middle East. That is a catastrophic situation if Iran continues to go that route. Bahrain earlier today targeted once more. It looked like a number of Iranian missiles fired during daylight hours. Again, not great. Don't want to see that. They seem rather confident moving these launchers out into the open to conduct these launches, these missile launches, while the sun is up. And then not long ago, we got notification that at least 2 ships have been struck in the Strait of Hormuz. So the traffic through the Strait of Hormuz is back to effectively zero. It is, for all intents and purposes, shut down. The IRGC released some pictures and video showing one of these tankers getting hit. They put out an announcement saying last night, 2 oil tankers that were acting illegally and intended to enter and exit the dangerous and accident-prone southern route of the Strait of Hormuz exploded and were prevented from moving. As long as America's evil actions continue in the region, this route will not be safe for the passage of chemical fertilizers or even a single cubic meter of oil and gas. So if it hasn't been clear quite yet, it's clear now. Iran's plan, right, is to completely shut down the Strait of Hormuz. The only ships that they will allow passage is without attacking is moving along the northern approach close to the Iranian shore. But it's not clear that any ships or very many ships at least are going to be willing to risk that at all right now. Now, in terms of the expansion of hostilities, you got to have a caveat on this, a big asterisk on the end of this one, because it's 2 parties that have made threats before, and we haven't really seen them get involved. It's a bit of a wild card that Iran has in their back pocket. The first is the Islamic Resistance of Iraq. This is a group of Iranian-backed Shiite militias across Iraq and Syria. They do have a fair amount of firepower. They have a lot of drones. They have a significant amount of fighters available to them. They largely sat out the first phase of this war. They issued a statement last night saying, quote, "The Islamic resistance reiterates and emphasizes that it will directly join the campaign against the American enemy if it continues to expand its aggression against the Islamic Republic, and that it will act with strength and determination against all American interests and bases in the country and the region." A quick note on that is if you go back to there were, I think it was 2 American service members killed during the attack on a tower in Jordan a couple of years ago, and the U.S. said, we are going to respond, and the response was pretty overwhelming and killed a lot of the senior officials in a variety of these militias under the Islamic Resistance of Iraq. We saw, by and large, those groups just back down and say, we're just not going to get involved anymore. We're going to let this play out. Generally, the same took place during the initial phases of this war, but it wouldn't be shocking if they sense weakness to want to get in on the, quote, victory. I mean, no doubt Iran has declared victory a little prematurely in this conflict, but you can see a scenario where these entities maybe are less concerned about the U.S. going after them if they think especially that we're on the verge of maybe leaving some of these bases in the region. This could be viewed by the Islamic Resistance of Iraq as an opportunity to kind of plant their flag and take some degree of ownership if they think the U.S. is on the verge of leaving or negotiating some sort of settlement and maybe stepping out of the Middle East. It's reading a lot into this, but just something to keep back of mind. The other one here is the Houthis. So the Yemen-based group, Iranian-backed, they just announced a few hours ago that a blockade of Saudi Arabia is in place, effective immediately. We should mention that as of this recording, there appears to be no impact on ships moving through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. They issued this warning. They said it is fully in effect. We haven't seen them enforce it quite yet in terms of drones or missiles or unmanned surface vessels or raiding parties attacking any vessels in the Red Sea. and the Gulf of Aden. But real quick, it's worth bringing up a map to show how kind of precarious of a situation the Houthis could bring to the table here. So map here, we got Iran up as we zoom in, Iran at the top part of the screen, Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz. When we zoom out a little bit to give you an idea, with all of this effectively shut down over the course of the last couple of months, traffic through the Red Sea has kind of been a savior. And one of those reasons is Saudi Arabia able to export a lot of their products through the Red Sea. The Houthis down here in Yemen have the ability, if they want to shut down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. They've done that before and came under pretty significant attack from the U.S. and Israel, but they still maintain that capability. Right now, they're saying that Saudi Arabia will not be allowed to move anything at all. So it sounds like they're going to try to affect Saudi exports to the north, but certainly through the south. So if the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz is shut down and we start to see any sort of reduction in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Gulf of Oman and the Red Sea, you start to kind of have an exponential effect on, say, gas availability, fuel availability around the world. Of course, head over to Sal and what's going on with shipping. I'm sure he's got a much deeper dive into the Houthi threat here. If not now, he will here shortly. All right, so in terms of things to watch for here in the coming days, 3 things stand out to me. First off, the U.S. strikes. Are we expanding the target set? Will the strikes that are carried out, tomorrow or the following day look all that different from what we've seen already? There has to be some sort of change. We expect the next wave of strikes, to do something that the last wave didn't. There has to be some degree of change. Now, it did look like in recent days, the U.S. has started going after more infrastructure targets. We've seen bridges and rail lines and roads taken out leading to Bandar Abbas. It's possible we're trying to isolate that area. So anyway, it's going to be interesting to see what the U.S. targets as these strikes intensify. The second piece is going to be the effect of Iranian strikes in the region. We have seen a number of impacts in places like Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan now as well. What does that do to the resolve of our allies in the region? They are taking the brunt of these Iranian attacks right now. Are they still willing to hold the line? Do they start to give in and maybe pressure the United States to try to bring about some sort of negotiated settlement in the near term? And then the last one, of course, the U.S. missile defense in the region. This was a pretty surprising couple days with a number of Iranian missiles and drones apparently making it through U.S. air defense. Is that a one-off? Did they get lucky? Was it new targeting that they were able to take advantage of? Or is this indicative of a change in what we might be able to expect in this conflict for the near future? So 3 items I'll be watching here in the coming days. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.